Yo, what is up YouTube? Welcome to Fuzzy's Action Videos. You are rocking it here with the one and only Fuzzy. I'm just gonna go find a nice spot to sit at here by the lake somewhere, or even by the riverside, and we'll go from there. So let's go. Hey guys, it's about to rain, so I might just have to do my video back home. I was hoping to do it out nearby the lake or the riverside, because it's a more soothing and a much better background, and it makes the video more interesting too. So I'll check you guys very shortly. Yep. Yo, how's it going guys? Welcome back to part 2 of Prison Talk, Jails and Rehabilitations. I'm continuing on to the story from yesterday's chapter, so let's get into it. So I was up to where I'd been exited from the Newcastle Rehabilitation Centre, Miracle Haven, and as I've said on yesterday's video, they ended up calling the courts, which led to them having to cancel my bail conditions to complete the program. So that was my biggest fear, of having to go back inside again. Even though I hadn't spent much time incarcerated yet, like not enough to, and it was pretty like selfish of me to do so, but because there are people that have spent longer, but the time that I'd spent in that period was enough for me to not want to go back. So when the rehabilitation staff had said to me, that when I get back to Canberra, I'm going to have to hand myself in and report back to the police station, instantly in my mind I was already planning, going on the run. So I ended up being on the run. So instead of going back to Canberra, I stayed up in Sydney. So while I was in Sydney on the run, I went and stayed with my cousin in Campbelltown, and I explained to him the whole story. And so I went and stayed with him in Campbelltown. He was happy to let me stay with them, of course, because they're family. So I happily stayed in Campbelltown up in Sydney for a bit. Then I remember I was going to work, because my cousin got me a job as a cabinet maker at a factory out at Ingleburn somewhere. Strathfield, that's right, it was up at Strathfield. And that was going well for about a month or so, and I remember coming back home, because the only way I could get to and from work was by train. And I remember catching the train back home from the city one afternoon, and I had to get off at Liverpool to change to get to get on the Campbelltown train. But I remember thinking to myself at this point, which is probably the stupidest thing I could ever think of, I remember saying to myself, I'm doing pretty well, maybe I can celebrate, I mean, one won't hurt, won't it? That's what we all say. So me already making the mistake by having the thought in my mind already, I took it that little step further and ended up going to Cabramatta, which during that year was very big on heroin dealing. So it was easier to get access to it just from jumping off the train at the train station. You know, if you're not Vietnamese or any sort of Asian background, you're instantly being asked by dealers left, right and center, because someone like myself, young, Tongan bloke, getting off at the train station, obviously to them I'm there for one reason. So this is when I happened to end up bumping in to a mate of mine in Sydney who was living in Canberra, who I met in Canberra too. God bless his soul. I'm not going to get into that story because it's not my place, and I don't want to do that to his family either. And I think it's just best that I keep that left out of it. It's got nothing to do with this story. But I remember bumping into him in Cabramatta, and I was a bit surprised at what he was doing there at that point. And then it just clicked to me that he actually lives there. He only comes down and visits the boys every now and again, and so we sort of hooked up again and we connected, and I got his number, and then one thing led to another. So that was me, going back into addiction again. At this point, I actually thought I had it under control. And when you're in addiction, you don't realize it. You might think you have it under control, but nobody ever does. Nobody. I've had people say, oh yeah, I only use once a week, or I only use once every fortnight, but I don't use all the time. But they're in denial. They don't want to admit the fact that they're using all the time, and that's okay. I mean, they might not even realize that they're using that much. Because when you're in addiction, you tend to put that aside. You don't think about how much you're using. You only think about what you think you are using. So I've done that plenty of times myself. I thought I had it under control. So I remember, once a week turned into once every 3 days. Once every 3 days turned into every day. And yet I was still in denial, telling everyone I'm only using every now and again. But really, I was only lying to myself. So, I'm not happy with myself for this, and I've put so much hate on myself for all the pain I've caused, my loved ones and the people that are closest to me, my family members. My addiction had gotten so out of hand that I got lazy to go to work, and they were cutting back on the numbers of workers, and because I had chucked a few sickies within those few months, I was the first one to be selected to be cut back. Again, I can only blame myself for this, but I remember my addiction at this point had spiraled out so badly that I was stealing money from my cousin, I was stealing their phone devices to sell to support my addiction. I still haven't spoken to my cousin since all that happened, and I really hate myself for it. And I don't blame him if he doesn't want to talk to me again, you know? Because at the end of the day, I can only put that on myself. People don't realise when you're far deep into a heroin addiction, a lot of people that don't understand it, the situation around it. But when you're so far deep into the heroin addiction, that sickness, that withdrawal, and everything relating to it, it's not that you want to thieve and do the things you do, you know, to make the money to support your habit. It's because a lot of us that have been in that addiction don't want to feel that pain and all that frustration that your body gets put into, all that pressure with the aches, the pains, the hot and cold sweats, the runny noses, the migraines, diarrhea, constantly throwing up, stomach aches. You have no appetite. You're just getting skinnier and skinnier. Withdrawing from heroin is probably the worst sickness I've ever had to experience. I've heard alcohol's much worse, but man, withdrawing from heroin was enough. I didn't ever want to go through that, you know? So, because I was thieving from my cousin, I remember I ended up, the last time I heard from him, I remember he called me up and he was telling me to bring the phone back, and you know, in my mind, I remember just ignoring his phone calls because all I wanted was just to get that fixed so I didn't have to feel like shit. What are you going to do the next day? The next day was me getting myself in a whole lot of shit that I never expected myself to. Here I am in Sydney now, homeless, running the streets, and you know, and at the same time I was roaming around the streets in the city because I didn't want to risk bumping into my cousin at this point. You know, when you get clean and, you know, and you get your mind right, you're rehabilitated, you know, and, you know, being a recovering addict, your mind becomes clearer, you know, as the months and the years go on, and you start to remember shit, you know, and the more you start to remember about the things that you've gone through, that I had been through in my addiction cycle, it only made my my mental health problems even worse. And I was already suffering from anxiety and depression already as it is, and to deal with all that shit on top of that, I had to train myself to become mentally stable. It took me a lot of years to forgive myself for all the wrongs I've done. So I remember I was around Sydney, and all that health that I had gained when I was in the rehabilitation centre, man, that went out the window. I had gone from being 95 kilos down to 68 in a matter of months. I remember also that I was causing a muck so badly around Sydney. I started breaking into houses there, knowing that, I don't have any criminal charges in Sydney, so I'm sweet, I'm fine. They won't catch me there. That's what I thought. I got so greedy into my addiction that what I had, even when I had a lot, just still wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to be comfortably happy with how much I was using at that point. So I ended up doing bigger things, I ended up doing purse snatches and going to big stores in Parramatta Westfields and going into Myers and filling up the trolleys with the most expensive electricals and just walking out from the back stores. This is what got me undone. I remember going into Sanity, a CD store that they used to have many around in the Sydney city and also here in Canberra. But I remember going into Sanity one day, and I had one of those those gift bags. They're like shopping bags, but they're gift bags. They're kind of like show bag, the cardboard show bags. Yeah, so I ended up going in with an empty one, and I remember putting my jumper inside the bag to make it look like I had stuff in there, and I remember filling it up with DVDs. Shitloads of Blu-ray DVDs, because Blu-rays only just were released at this point, and they were becoming the biggest money sellers at that stage of my addiction. And I got so greedy that I went back to the same store 3 times in one day. I remember going to a CD hock shop and hocking all the new DVDs I had, and I went the second time, and even the second time was enough, but for my addiction it wasn't. So it was the third time I had gone into the Bondi. That's right, it was Bondi at this point that I had gone in the second time. So I did Parramatta once, the Sanity store in Parramatta, and then I went to Bondi, and I just thought Bondi was easy, so I went back to Bondi the second time, and this had already been the third time I did shit out of the whole day. Just before closing time, I thought I was out of there. I remember throwing that bag over the beepers and off I went. I thought I was home. As soon as I got around the corner, the cops were already there waiting for me. I should have known that I'd been watched after the first time. But you know what they say, everything happens for a reason, right? Stupid. I remember they had pulled me back into the store for questioning, and there were 3 cops, and they pulled up the video footage of me coming in the first time, and of course I was wearing the same clothes. What do you know? So I couldn't argue myself out of it. So they asked me if I had anything to come clean. They questioned me about the store I was selling them at. I just told them I didn't know what they were talking about. I just said I made out as if I was stealing them for myself, for my own personal use, you know. So I told them I had a movie addiction.
What? Yeah, man. I think Mitch was beautiful because he's got good brains.
Funny that coming from a person who clearly looks like they were high as a kite on whatever the hell they thought I was on. So they arrested me. They arrested me until I had to go to court the next morning. I remember they took me back to Surrey Hills Police Station, which is where the Surrey Hills holding cells is where they kept me overnight until I had gone to court. I remember going to court the next morning, and they reminded me in custody to go back to Silverwater, so I ended up in MRRC. I remember being in Darcy and thinking to myself, what the hell have I got myself into? You know, the New South prisons compared to Canberra they're tough prisons. And there I am in the middle of it, got myself stuck in a whole heap of shit. So the thing about the Sydney prisons is you can never get yourself settled in one place. You know, they move you around a lot, so you can't get yourself comfortable in one place. So I remember in a period of 6 months, they had moved me around to I think it was about 4 or 5 prisons. 4 or 5 prisons in a period of 6 months. So I remember I started off at MRRC. I was there for a few weeks, and then they classoed me to I remember they classoed me over to Junee, Parramatta. Sorry, they tipped me over to. So they tipped me to from MRRC back to Parramatta, and I was there. I had to sit in Parramatta until I was classoed. I was at Parramatta jail for about 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks before they classoed me to Manus. Then I had to wait for the next truck that was going out to Junee.